I'm Coulter Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this lifestyle radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. My name is Al Graham, and we are coming to you live here from 420radio.ca. Plus, tonight we are being broadcasted live to the patrons at Gonjanista's Vapor Lounge on King Street in Hamilton, Ontario. Tonight I am joined by my joint host, Debbie Stultz-Giffin, who has brought us a guest who is a patient and a cannabis advocate who has lots of concerns. But before we find out more, Deb and I are going to have a quick chat, aren't we, Deb?
Yes, we are, Al.
So how have you been? I haven't spoken to you in a month.
Not too bad, thanks. It's been a busy month yet again with several court support dates here in Nova Scotia, particularly for Heidi Chartrand and some of the bud tenders who were arrested and charged here in Nova Scotia in late September.
Ah, yes. You guys have been, this support program you guys have been running there at MUM has been great. I think it's fantastic for what you guys have been doing. And I always see Chris Backer online there asking or mentioning to people that, hey, I'm heading out to such and such place to support so-and-so who wants to come with me.
Oh, absolutely, and it's been busy enough that we've actually started creating event pages for the separate court appearances. Last week, Heidi was in court twice. One day the weather was prohibitive because we've had snow here in Nova Scotia already, and it kept me home. But she's been in court applying for bail variations, trying to follow in Chris Enz's footsteps so that hopefully she will be able to reopen her dispensary, because certainly Chris Enz from the Pharmacist dispensary in Halifax had similar bail conditions placed on him for a couple of raids that he went through at the farm, and he was able to, at bail variation hearings, stand in front of a judge and successfully have the judge agree to allowing him to return to the dispensary to sell cannabis to patients, because he was providing an essential service, and Heidi's hopeful that she'll be able to do the same. A couple of the other individuals who stood in front of the judge certainly had no difficulty having their conditions changed, because legalization has happened, so it certainly made no sense to bar them from going places that might sell bongs and papers, or to disallow them to go into a legal cannabis outlet, although none of them were specifically seeking to necessarily do that in particular, because most of them are intent on boycotting the government-sanctioned dispensaries.
And it's just the principle of it all too, as far as that end of it all is. Not allowing them to go to a place where cannabis is being served. And
well, absolutely. While they're not allowed to go to any of what they would consider an illicit medical cannabis dispensary to actually get the things that might help them.
Which is one of the, and as licensed patients, that's one of the options that they promote to us in that letter that we recently received, saying that, hey, now you can go here and get it. So, if the courts say that they couldn't go there, then that would actually be blocking them possibly from accessing medication if they needed to get to a place.
For sure, but the courts were quick to relinquish that aspect. They had no problems. And in fact, it was interesting. This judge was careful in her selection of words. She didn't call them legal outlets, but rather lawful outlets.
There you go. They are lawful. They're legal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
that's right.
but in my mind, so is any completely medical cannabis dispensary should be considered lawful, wouldn't you think?
I would think so. Yeah.
Whether or not it's got the government seal of approval on it.
Well, that's that's where right now the natives, First Nations, the government say that they gave up those directions to the provincial governments, and the First Nations will say, no, we deal with Canada. So there's ongoing negotiations there, but yet they're still operating.
For
right?
Sure.
But yet they're forcing others like Heidi to shut down. So how is she making out in those cases? Since those appearances since she was on the show last.
Well, she had a court appearance last week, at which time the judge announced that she felt she didn't have jurisdiction to hear her bail variation application. So if it hasn't been done already, Heidi will very shortly be filing paperwork in the Supreme Court to make that happen.
Good.
And she's filed a quash motion on all of the charges, and I believe her next court date is either the 18th or 19th of December, if not both days.
Oh, both days. Whew. That's good. Well, it's good that she's learning all this stuff and going and achieving that. That's a lot of spending time getting educated.
Oh, absolutely. And I wasn't, of course, I'd already mentioned I wasn't able to attend her last court appearance, but it's my understanding that the Crown basically admitted to being party to refusing to hear her bail variation application because it was his effort to make sure that the dispensary stayed closed as long as possible.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Which seems to me to be an abuse of power.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out as the courts proceed. We wish her well, obviously. Okay. Before we bring our guest in, we have one other bit of news as I would like to announce to everybody, our listeners, and that we have a new joint host here at the program. And that person's name is, and I'm going to mess this up really bad, but I know I will get it right.
Eventually.
Right.
I know you and names, Elsie. Eventually you'll get there.
We've had Owen Smith, so I had an easy name.
But go for it.
Okay. We are very happy to announce that Julie Chirallo has joined us here at the Pace Radio Show. Julie has got extensive involvement within the cannabis community, within Canada, the U.S., and really, Europe, across the globe. She's a person who, like many of us, who has been working very hard in order to change the laws, help patients with cannabis, educate others, and she's traveled to many places and heard many stories, and she's going to join us on a rotating basis and share those stories and have guests come to the show on a monthly basis, just like yourself, Deb.
Well, I'm sure Julie will be a breath of fresh air and bring many people on as guests from the cannabis industry nationally and internationally as well. I remember the first time I met Julie was at the very last Treating Yourself Expo when she was then at the helm of the Magic Launch Box.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I may have told. I didn't know that.
You probably did chat with her. In fact, she gifted several of us from Normal Women's Alliance of Canada with a launch box because they're all handcrafted, or at least the wooden portion of them. And
yes.
because there's handcrafted, there's sometimes a small flaw in the wooden portion. And they do compassionate gifting with them.
Yeah.
Oh, you'd have to have a well-trained eye to find any flaw in them, I'll tell you. But
well, I wait till she starts on December the 12th, and so I'm gonna have to talk to her about this because she came over to our booth at the Treating Yourself Expo, and she gave every one of us in the booth a magic launch box. And then now I've used that as a educational tool when I've done shows like documentary movies or gone to helped Wayne at Canada Days when we're doing the flea markets.
Right on.
So yeah, I didn't know that. So there you go. Good. And Julie's also got, obviously, for those who don't know, Skunk Magazine, heavily involved there. The magazine, The Highway, also heavily involved there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to have her on the show. I say it's a bit of we've branched out in a bit of a direction. We've always had hosts from here in Canada, and Julie, while having a lot of connections here in Canada, also spends a lot of time in the U.S.
So I'm sure she'll bring a lot to the show.
Yes. Yeah. Look forward to it. And as mentioned, she starts on December the 12th. The second Wednesday of the month is when she'll be appearing. All right, Deb, time to bring our guest in?
For sure.
Yes. Okay, well, at this time, I'd like to welcome our guest, who I described as a patient, a cannabis advocate who has lots of concerns. We'd like to welcome Alex LeBlanc to the Pace Radio Show. Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good. We're sorry we're a little bit longer there today than normal, but we've got you on here now, and now we're going to learn all about you.
Right on. How can I away?
Good. Okay, basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to let Deb get things started. She's going to ask some questions, and I'll jump in when I get the urge to ask a question myself or when we get to the commercial break. All right?
Sounds good.
Okay, over to you, Deb.
Thanks, Al. And thanks for agreeing to join us this evening, Alex. It's always a pleasure to get to chat with you.
Yeah, same, Debbie, same.
For folks that don't know, Alex is from Wolfville here in Nova Scotia, my home province. Wolfville is a small university town in the Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia, just to help you paint a little bit of a picture of where Alex is from. So, Alex, I'll let you briefly describe why you came to arrive at cannabis as medicine.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start back at the beginning. I mean, growing up in the Valley, Nova Scotia, in Kings County, Nova Scotia, I smoked some cannabis as a teenager at about the age of 13. And then by the time I was 18, I started using it for sleep. By the time I was 24, I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I started using it medically. I got my first possession and production license. And I use it pretty heavily for multiple sclerosis now. In 2016, I got pharmaceutical free. And ever since then, I've been maintaining with cannabis. I've got a pretty crazy medical cannabis story and some crazy cannabis history and some current crazy cannabis events. So feel free to pick at whatever you like, Debbie.
Well, we'll probably pick on all of them before we're through here, Alex, no doubt.
Sounds good.
So you've been virtually pharmaceutical free for 2 years?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What were you on before then?
I was on probably over 10 pharmaceuticals at once. I was on like 6 Percocets a day, a couple hydromorphs, just for opioids, and I was on 2 different kinds of muscle relaxers, maxing both of those. I was on anti-fatigue medication. I was also taking sleeping pills to sleep at night. I was taking stomach pills to balance out my stomach. It got to the point where I max dosed all those drugs. We were going to have to start injecting my medication. That was like the only viable option because my body I couldn't handle the drugs so much. So we actually installed a baclofen pump inside my stomach, which is about a little bit bigger than a hockey pump, and it had a catheter coming from it which dispersed the muscle relaxers directly into my spine because I was so stiff to the point where, and being a young, healthy man, I was stiff to the point where people couldn't bend me, and I couldn't even really do my daily stretches that I needed to do. So I was deteriorating quite quickly. But that operation didn't go well, and after I overdosed for 6 weeks, not even being able to drink water, having to have people help me out, then I lost my ability to get out of bed from that point forward. And ever since then, I was overdosing and going through withdrawal at the same time. So I got off all the pill form medication pretty quickly. And the baclofen pump I scheduled to have the surgery out a few months later because it just wasn't working for me. And I had further complications where it was, hitting off my bones and my organs and stuff. And it hurt a lot. So by the end of it, I just really wanted it out and didn't enjoy the experience. And by going up on my cannabinoids and developing my capsule routine and my whole cannabis routine, I got to go down off the pharmaceuticals, the oral drugs, and then eventually get the pump out. And even in the hospital, when I had the operation for the pump, I only used cannabis. And here's something really interesting about that trip, is I used cannabis in the hospital the whole time. And I vaporized my concentrates in the hospital, and I used my distillate, my little smoke buddy, and a little vaporizer pen. And at that time, there was no regulations, and there was nothing anybody could dispute about that because there was no complaints. Like, it was obvious it was helping me. And at that time, there were no laws in place saying the hospital staff couldn't let me use my medication from home because they didn't have any to offer me. And right now with cannabis, that's still kind of gray. But I was one of the very few people to be able to medicate in hospital in Nova Scotia.
So they knew.
Oh yeah, I didn't hide. I've vaporized in front of security, in front of my doctor. I've shown. One time, she had a student there. I pulled my vaporizer out and showed her in front of her student. Right, like they're not going to be rude and kick me out because I came in from the cold and I'm shaking and I'm having spasms and I pull out a vaporizer pen. You can literally see the results. So at that time, it was socially acceptable.
Wow, pumping! I've never heard of this stomach thing. This is wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Deb, you have the same condition. Now, you didn't. I know a lot of people have this, and you all seem to be really intense in making sure you get cannabinoids into you in every possible way. And
well, I think a lot of it, Al, I keep going back to the specialists in the States who feel that a lot of the chronic conditions are caused by endocannabinoid deficiencies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it certainly makes sense to me. How about you, Alex? What do you think?
I've got a few theories on the MS and the cancer and the neurological disorders and how our food sources have a lot of toxins in them, and we consume a lot of toxins. We're around a lot of toxins. The more of those toxins we're around, those toxins either manifest themselves into cancers, and our body either tries to reject them, or they manifest themselves into plaques or scars, which is your MS, your Parkinson's, your neurological disorders. And, then you have to deal with those problems.
Yeah.
But I mean, I grew up, for example, malnourished for the most part, not extremely, but I mean, I ate like things that weren't very healthy for me, like hot dogs and canned tomato soup and crackers and stuff like that all the time. So, growing up in that kind of box food environment, you don't
Process.
get a whole lot of nutrition. And I started working from like when I was 11 on. So it was, I burnt myself out at a young age. By 24, I burnt out, right? So.
Yeah.
Yes, and 24 is certainly young to be diagnosed with MS.
Yeah, it wasn't even that I was diagnosed at 24. It's that I had to stop working as a full-time Red Seal tradesman. I was a motor vehicle body repair, and I was falling down at the end of the day. Like I couldn't. The one particular day I had to stop. It was the final straw. The last few months, I had to have the older journeyman help me flip over car doors and take them off and stuff, which was, humbling in itself. But when I was doing an estimate for a customer and I couldn't walk, 30 feet from her car to the door, and I fell down 3 times on my way in. And, I had to throw in the towel and say, this is enough. I can't do this anymore. I'm so sorry. I loved my work and I loved everything I did. But I had to throw in the towel and admit defeat on that one.
For sure, and that's not an easy one. I can appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a passionate career, and I gained a lot from it, and I take that knowledge to where I am today.
So I'm assuming that your MS progressed fairly quickly.
Yeah, I never really made the basic. I was always a little off growing up. Like I couldn't bend over on the flexibility charts quite as much as everybody else, but I was seemingly normal. I had a tiny little skip when I walked, but I was always very active. And I mean, I played rugby and I did a lot of extremely active stuff. So I was seemingly normal until I turned about 24 in 2008. I broke my foot helping my father-in-law move some stuff, and I broke my 5th metatarsal in my foot. And being a tradesman with a young child at home, it's fairly independent. I just went back to work on my broken foot, and I kept working on my broken foot. I had an X-ray a week later. It was still, or a month later, it was still broken. A month later, it was still broken. A month later, it was still broken, and I just stopped getting the X-rays and went on about my day. Well, a year later, I was training for the military and running through apple orchards, and I was having trouble picking up my foot. And, I went to check out the doctors about it. And a lot of people hummed and hawed, and a few smirked, were like, I can't tell you what I think it is because it's not my job. But, go down the road through the specialists. I went through the knee, joint, hip specialist first, and they ruled that stuff out, that it wasn't the foot anymore. It wasn't my knee from the tradesman, from the auto body, dropping it on the concrete all the time. It wasn't the fact that, my thigh was a slightly bit shorter on one side than the other. That was all fairly normal stuff. Then I did the MRIs, and I had braces, so it was further complicated. I had to coordinate it with a dentist to get braces off, and it was really a mess trying to get diagnosed and trying to get doctors and secretaries to do their jobs and get everybody to communicate together. And it took me about a year and a half to get diagnosed, which was fairly fast for around here. And
Absolutely.
As soon as I got diagnosed, I got rushed into a drug trial study with an experimental drug for MS through the MS Society in Halifax, or the MS Clinic in Halifax, and I did a 3-year drug trial study on an experimental drug. It's been a crazy medical journey, I can tell you that.
Absolutely, it sure sounds like it, Alex.
Yeah.
So now that you're just medicating with cannabis, what's your favorite mode of consumption?
Well, I'll go by essentials first, I guess. Well, I guess what's my favorite? I love dabs. I love terp sauce. I love concentrates and diamonds and stuff with a lot of cannabinoids and a lot of flavor. It doesn't need to have the sedative effects or have a really big buzz. I really love my terpenes a whole lot.
Love the flavors, eh?
I sure do.
Oh, yes. I know what you mean. Keep going.
Now that we've got Al drooling over
I agree. Flavor is a big part of it to me. And, I know at one time when I was judging back for the TY Cup that when it come down to a tie, whatever had the highest flavor score, in my picks, that's what I would choose.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be my favorite. My essential would be my capsules because I don't really function without those. I don't move. I can move, but I become very rigorous, and I essentially become like a pin instead of something that moves. And if I am moving, it's going to be because I'm in a seated position. My body's trying to spasm me out of the seated position I'm in. I take a fairly heavy dose of coconut oil-based infused capsules that I make from the cannabis I grow. It's really easy. I just freeze it, and I don't decarb it first. So I keep all the terpenes, all the flavor stuff I love. So, for example, if I burp or something, I burp straight cannabinoids, and the whole room smells like weed. But,
so you don't decarboxylate it then?
No, I don't, because I find when I decarboxylate it, it takes me past the point where I can function so well. But it does. I've sent off for lab results before. I don't really believe the lab, so in February there's going to be a local lab up and running with everything they have, with all the testing equipment for the new pesticide testing that's coming out in January. So, once that stuff's all up and running, I'll have a local lab I can work with, and I can hone in everything. But right now, the last lab results I got showed that it was partially decarboxylated from my extraction process, so it must have got slightly overheated or something.
Well, so, slightly, but would that not mean that some of it had converted to Delta 9, and some of it has still remained as THC acid? So
yeah. So the last time the results came back, which I'm following up the lab on, but I'm so busy I'm doing all over the place. But the results came back. They were 5.1 milligrams THC and 4.9 THCA. So that's pretty good for a 1 mil product. It's pretty potent, but
and it gives you both, and it gives you the benefits of both varieties of the THC.
The strange thing that bothered me was that none of the other cannabinoids showed up. And I mean, if I'm doing from fresh, organically grown cannabis, I don't understand how the other cannabinoids magically disappeared or didn't get extracted. So I'm going to follow up the lab and see what was up there.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they would be capable of testing for like CBG and other cannabinoids.
Yeah, CBN, CBG. There's so many. There's over, I think, 70 cannabinoids.
Yeah,
different variations of each one. So, yeah.
I guess as long as the lab can test for all the different cannabinoids.
But I thought when I was paying for lab results, that's what I was paying for. When the sheet came back and it had ND for none detected on it. I went through all that work to pay all that money to see those results, and then they weren't there. I don't understand. I'm going to have to do more research and find out why they weren't there. Maybe I messed with extraction methods. Maybe cannabinoids don't go until a certain temperature. Maybe I got to crank it up, but I'm pretty sure that's not how that works. I'll follow up with some scientists and stuff later on in more technical research. But
what about starting off with the base results of the raw cannabis?
Yeah, it just seems off when there's for example, no CBD, no CBN. It's just THC. Where's the CBG? It doesn't make sense.
Well, I know in the raw form, most cannabis I've seen tested, could have higher THC, but the CBD levels would be really low, eh?
Yeah, but still CBN.
Still there, right? So, all right, Deb. You're still with us, eh? We're talking about lab tests here.
I'm here. I'm all ears.
You're all ears. Okay, well, we're going to take a break. All right? And,
I figured we were getting to that time.
yeah, and then you can start off when we come back. How's that?
That
Sounds
works
good.
for me.
Okay, all right. Alex, I'm sure we'll get into some of this stuff afterwards as the show progresses. But I usually try to connect our songs to our guests. And tonight I picked a song called Respect.
Ooh, nice.
All right. Okay. See, you like that, eh? Yeah. Pardon me?
Aretha Franklin?
No. This was from Rick Reimer.
Nice.
Nice. Okay. All right. And we're also, our listeners will hear tonight a new commercial from a new sponsor here at actually all the way across the Lifestyle Radio Network. All the programs here on 420 Radio will be playing this commercial here, and that is by a friend and a company business in Tenaganaga. I knew I messed that one up too. Sorry, guys, in Ontario, and that is Legacy 420. So you will hear their commercial during tonight's commercials and during other broadcasts. Other than that, you will hear a bit of a song called Respect, as I mentioned to Alex, from Rick Reimer. And when Deb and I return, we will continue our discussion with Alex LeBlanc. This is the Pace Radio Show. We are live here at 420radio.ca.
Hey, this is Cheech. And this is Chong. And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio. What is it? Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time. 420 Radio? Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Respect, right, makes the world go round. Respect, don't put others down. Respect, not a necessity. RESPECT, respect.
Come again.
And you can't be fooled.
Respect, not.
It's the golden rule.
Legacy 420 has medicinal and recreational products down to a science, literally. With 2 biochemists on staff and a chief scientific advisor, every product is tested in the Legacy 420 laboratory. Legacy 420, Tyendinaga. Open 9 to 9 every day. Visit legacy420.com.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Canadays, your friendly neighborhood Campbellford head shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Let us help you grow your 4 with weekly Tuesday night gardening sessions for beginners. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. Canadays, more than just a head shop. 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reef Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with Cannabis and Coffee with Tamarawana. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham, and no week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at 420radio.ca. An apple a day won't keep this doctor away, but a gram of cannabis may keep you away from the doctor. Find out how by tuning into The Higher Estate with Dr. Ira Price, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here at 420radio.ca. Tune in to DJ Passion from the land of Ganja, the island of Jamaica, when he comes to you live every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 420radio.ca.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Watch it. Once I'm walking down the street, wanna get a bite to eat, but I look a bit run down.
Just a bit run down.
Waiter in a restaurant looks at me, says, "What you want? We don't need no bums in town."
What am I saying?
Doesn't hear a word I say, turn his back and walk away.
Hello, welcome back. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show. Not only are we live here at 420radio.ca, but you also find us live at other audio locations such as Spreaker, Shoutcast, TuneIn Radio. And tonight, if you're at Ganjanista's Lounge, Vapor Lounge in Hamilton, Ontario, you will also hear us there. Tonight on the program, I'm joined by our guest, cannabis advocate and patient, Alex LeBlanc, plus our joint host, Debbie Stultz-Giffin. Both, I believe, anyways. Are you both with the Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana? I know Deb is, but Alex?
I try to be with everybody I can be.
There you go. Get involved. That's what you're doing.
Good answer, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that wants me to sign on wholeheartedly, but I try to help everybody out. I'm just too much of a wild card, I think.
Okay, I'm going to pass the mic over to Deb and let her get started once again.
Well, I just made a little note as we were going to break with Rick Reimer and respect. Just personal interest more than anything was that Rick Reimer was actually here in Nova Scotia in 2005 for the last hemp festival that we held. We only had 2 of them. And Rick Reimer was actually arrested on that Saturday evening. There was an RCMP officer had come to the grounds with a noise complaint. And Rick was standing next to him and exhaling cannabis smoke, and the cop panicked, smacked his head off of the cruiser, threw him in the back seat, and whisked him off of the grounds to the closest RCMP detachment, busily trying to figure out what the heck he was going to charge him with.
Wow.
So,
really? Rick
and
is so patient.
I won't use up too much more of Alex's time, but it's an interesting story, I think.
Yeah.
He went on to write a song because of that experience called the Half-Dressed Hemp Fest Blues, because when he went to the RCMP detachment, he had on hemp pants that had a drawstring, and they, of course, wanted him to either remove the string or take off his pants because they were concerned that he might endeavor to hang himself with this shoestring. And he refused because Rick also has MS, and it would be far too difficult for him to try to put that drawstring back in.
Right.
So hence the name Half-Dressed Hempfest Blues. And Rick is the first person that we did court support for here in Nova Scotia at the Annapolis Royal Courthouse. And at that time, there were no smoking restrictions outside of buildings. You could smoke right up next to the door, so that's exactly what we did. We were all right up by the courthouse door heavily medicating before and after court when he went in to have his bogus charge dropped.
Wow, that's a lot of history on Rick. I hadn't heard any of that. I've heard, I know of his court case for driving and being charged while he was smoking and driving. But yeah, I didn't know anything about that.
That would have been after that.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for the background. Cool.
That's my other history lesson for the night.
All right, back over to Alex.
Thank you for your patience, Alex. You've encountered many obstacles, forms of prejudice because of your cannabis use.
Yes.
And I'd like you to talk to our listeners about that. And those experiences.
Well,
take all the time that you'd like.
Okay. Well,
because I know you have lots to say.
Yeah. So as far as the prejudices things, and I come from a unique demographic. I'm low income. I'm disabled. I came from a family that wasn't wealthy, that couldn't support me through my disability. That I came from an area that was low income, so my friends couldn't really support me either financially, and most of them, had to work to support themselves anyways. And I had a child at a young age, so I had a lot on my plate. And when you get the little bit extra thrown on your plate because you're disabled, and you have to fill out extra forms for waivers of fees, and you have to explain why you're not working any longer, and you have to fight to get into social assistance and fight to get legal aid representation and go through every single appeals process and have every single doc or secretary drop all your things. It really drains your time and puts you down. But that's one of the things I'm dealing with today on a prejudice basis, because in the beginning it was really draining and exhausting. But here I am, I'm 33, I'm not 24 anymore. And I've been doing this a while, and I'm kind of getting tired of the redundancies in the system. So, for example, like my continuing care people, my social assistance people, my occupational therapists, my doctors, they've been dealing with me for a while. They're getting tired of the redundancies too. The family court system, the waiver of fees, the everything. It's overwhelming having to do all the extras as a disabled individual. And then when you throw the prejudice on top of it, the fact that a lot of people look at you like you're entitled and you think you deserve everything, or you have all the different demographics that pick away at your bones, so to speak. It's really disheartening. And I don't want to single out demographics because it's a stereotype in itself. But I mean, I've gone out in public and had people give me dirty looks because I walk my service dog up the road and he's walking beside me, and we take up the whole sidewalk, and there's potholes and I have to swerve around them. And I mean, people with legs can step in the grass, but if I drive in the muddy grass, I'm gonna, on a hill, especially in Wolfville on Gasper Avenue, I'm gonna flip my wheelchair. And I mean, I go through things like that, just crossing the street all day, every day, where people give me dirty looks, or people either often get offended or inspired. It's not usually middle ground. It's like, I'm on the road in my wheelchair, and you got to get home from work, so you're frustrated. And you tromp on the gas and you get right by, you give me a dirty look on the way by. Some people beat the horn. Some people wave and smile, and some people stop. But I don't know. It might not even be prejudice. It may just be how I perceive it. But I really, there are definitely some things that are prejudice, though, like extremely so. Like, for example, the family court system, or what prejudices are going to settle in now that the rules are actually written down? How are they going to not pay attention to the rules that are written down and not prejudice people? How am I going to be protected now? Because all the insurance companies, all the banks, everybody's got regulations that say I can't exist in society. I can't take my capsules out of my home depending on your interpretations. because the edibles regulations and all that things, that they slipped in regulations last minute that say, something about 2 pans of brownies, so no more than 30 grams, and that's for recreational, but also applies to medical. And there's just all this complication. And I've emailed the cannabis people and my MLA, my MP, and they strategically don't get back to you for a very long time because they're waiting for answers that aren't there. And then when you go to the top and you ask the appropriate people for the answers, they still don't have the answers for you because they're having meetings on the questions you're asking. So it's very frustrating as a patient who's trying to get permission to survive and asking all my authority figures that hey, can you guys help me in any way? Can you regulate me in any way to bring me into the fold or to help me or to help me maintain? But there, everywhere as you go for help, there's nothing. And I guess that's not prejudice in itself, but like when you go apply for a lawyer and they deny your appeal and pretend they didn't hear they deny your initial request and they pretend that they didn't hear what you said in their office, and they write it down on a piece of paper and send it back to you and then send you to somebody else after you just jumped through all the hoops and had all the waiver fees and you went up the street and down the street in your wheelchair and you went through the snow and you did a 6-hour day and you went back and you did another 6-hour day for paperwork. You get tired of it after a while.
You can get really discouraged for sure.
You've got a degenerative condition, and you've only got the use of your last hand left. It really sucks the life out of you when you go outside and you're sensitive to cold and you've got to go out in the winter on the road in your wheelchair that a regular person would have difficulty doing. I bobble around like a bobblehead. The roads and the sidewalks aren't built for me. It hurts. And I'm being forced to go back and forth to court, to hospital, social assistance, to specialist appointments, to blah, blah, blah. They want me to renew my license for everything every single year. They want me to justify every single medication I take every single year, every single naturopathic thing I take every single year, every stretch I take. And they want me to do some things every 3 months. They don't want me to do others. Like, it's a little overwhelming and ridiculous, because if I took, pills and things like that, they could renew them every 3 months. And, pills are straightforward. They're not abstract. You don't need to grow pills, so my life could be easier without cannabis on the pills, except for the fact that I die. So, I feel prejudice. I feel prejudice backed into a corner because now there's rules written down that say I'm not allowed to exist out in society. And at some point, authority figures are going to have to try to enforce those rules. And they don't want to. It's uncomfortable. It's not fair to put me in this position where I can't exist in a normal society.
And by rules, you mean the new Cannabis Act that was implemented on October 17th with legalization?
Yes, I do. The new Cannabis Act. So, for example, I held a Cushmas party down at the Anvil in Wolfville. And, try to have a good time as ethically as possible. We brought the Royal Kush Band. We brought the city natives came. We brought the Panda Gang. And we had a really good time. There wasn't a whole lot of people there. But we just parked a U-Haul out back and set a U-Haul up as a lounge in case people needed to go outside and medicate so they didn't have to completely freeze because it was freezing. It was like -10 or something, but at least we had couches set up and you could get shelter from the wind.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, with absent lounges, absent everything, and the new bar regulations jumping up, you're not even allowed in a bar with cannabis anymore because it's conflicting against the bar regulations, and they'll kick you out for it. Unless you're a medical patient, then it depends on how well you can talk, whether you get kicked out or not.
As far as your Christmas, your effort was there, and things just take a little bit of time, and more people will show.
Oh, it was a good time. Like, I don't care. There was only it's there. I really don't. It was awesome. The Royal Kush Band rocked it, and the city natives rocked it, and the Panda Gang rocked it. It was awesome.
Good. And you supplied everybody with a spot to medicate, and it gives patients an opportunity to get out, because not all patients can get out. They're forced into spots where they can't medicate. So it's nice for a spot where they can go to a spot, meet other people, socialize, have a good time, and still be able to medicate.
Honestly, that's why I wanted to have the event, was so I could go to an event.
Well, there you go. You start something, and then the next year you just do it again. And you may find out with legalization that maybe some of the people who wouldn't attend the event because of the concerns, maybe those concerns have passed, and you'll have a better attendance next year.
Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm pretty involved in the town and the area, and I'm trying to encourage the town to be more cannabis friendly. But right now, it's a weird time in Nova Scotia in particular.
Yeah, because you guys have your recreational cannabis is purchased through the liquor stores, isn't it?
We're essentially a locked out province when you look into the regulations.
You're what?
We're basically locked out.
Locked out?
Yeah, well, we've got one lab that's not fully set up yet.
Yeah.
We got one licensed producer or something, but we've got no medical storefronts. The only retail is through the NSLC. The NSLC is not. They're retailing what they can, but they're not retailing medical, and they'll straight up when you go in. Right? They're not retailing medical. They're not planning on retailing medical. So once
and they're not allowed to either. So that's a problem. Having as in our guest that we had on last week, he says which was lawyer Robert Laurie. He says it's not right where they have a retail store where people can access cannabis, but you can't have patients are forced to do a mail order system and don't have an opportunity to go to medical cannabis storefront where they can get medical information and somebody has knowledge in behind the counter.
Would you like my NSLC story?
Oh, you can.
Sure.
Let's hear it. Go ahead.
Right. So, the NSLC opened October 17th selling recreational cannabis. Debbie and I and the Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana, the people that could come out, came out, and we protested down there and met. He wasn't there officially, but Mark Fury was there, the Minister of Justice for Nova Scotia. And I accidentally dropped my sign at his feet. He passed it back to me. He was pretty nice, gave me a little smile. He was inside and making sure everybody got their business cards and doing their thing. But it was, a lot of people came up to me and asked me why I had a sign on my lap that says the Cannabis Act makes my life harder. And individually, all day long, from when did we go, Debbie? From 10 to 12 or 10 to 2, or what did we do?
10 till 12.
10 till 12, yeah. Definitely felt like 10 till 2. No, I'm just joking. But it was nice. So I sat in there on the hot seat in the store because it was cold outside. And I'm temperature sensitive, and I wasn't going to sit outside the whole time. As much as I wanted to be outside with everybody, Debbie, I really couldn't. Not for 2 hours. So I sat inside by myself and just calmly outside the liquor store explained to people why the Cannabis Act was making my life harder. And then shortly after that, I did, prior to October 17th, I had started my reading, but I focused heavily on my reading. And I reached out to the NSLC and the Cannabis Licensing and Tracking System and the cannabisincanada.ca people. And I tried to access the NSLC and say, okay, well, there are patients in the area that would like to take my capsules. Can I vend through you? And, basically there's so many barriers in place that's not even a possibility for quite a ways into the future, and undefined ways into the future. Through contacts with the NSLC and contacts with the Cannabis Licensing and Tracking System, there's no timeline on when we'll get medical access in Kings County, Nova Scotia.
Or anywheres in all of Canada, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yes. I reached up a little further, and I reached into cannabis excise tax applications for the CRA. I reached in with the cannabis licensing system, and I asked questions about every type of license and specifics, and I have applications pending for every single type of license. And I have a pending ACMPR license for growing. I signed into licensed producer system last minute before October 17th. with Aurora, only to find they had nothing on their website that would benefit me and my condition. So then prior to that, I was through the MMAR and the Allard injunction, and I moved during that injunction. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. So technically, I am licensed to produce and possess cannabis, but my license is or is not recognized. I'm just stuck in limbo, right? Because now I'm stuck in limbo with all three systems.
Yeah, well, I know in the Allard thing, when you moved, you had to reapply under the ACMPR.
Yeah, and that was
because everything has to remain the same on the card from the MMAR.
Yeah, but in Nova Scotia, in rural Nova Scotia, I'd lost my family doctor in 2015, and that was prior to all those taking effect. So there's, I mean, it'd be what it'd be if there was trying to be legal persecution. But I think in my situation, like I even reached out and called the prosecutors. I called the New Minas RCMP supervisors and tried to reach out to them and say, you know, what can I do? You know, because this is my situation. And they never reached back. They actually just stayed mute because my situation is pretty hot and pretty human rights centered. So typically when I reach out to people for advice or to ask specific questions about persecutions and you know, what do? They typically just stay away because they don't have any solutions for the problem. You know, when I reached out to social assistance last year, it was like, I don't know how I'm going to fund my cannabis. What am I going to do? Can you guys fund my cannabis? How am I going to fund my growing cannabis? Can we get some of the electricity funded for housing? You know, it's been a really long road, and I feel like I've tried everything. And
obviously they said, I mean, you know, it's a pretty good assumption that they said no, but there have been, you know, people in the past who have gone to court on the East Coast and actually have won some rights for coverage, and then I think the other courts have thrown things out and stuff like that. But do they look at you as if you're crazy?
In my case, they didn't, because medically it really makes sense, right?
It does.
Like I need it, and you can see it. And if I go like 3 hours without it, you know. So, So really everybody tried to work with me the whole way along, you know. So my social assistance lady tried to help me get funding for what she could help me get funding for. And my occupational therapist tried to help me get funding for what she could help me for, you know, wheelchairs and stuff. And it's just a constant scrambling of trying to get stuff underneath you as stuff fell apart. But once the cannabis is thrown on, that's just thrown on in your lap solely. And you try to rely on friends and scrape together whatever dollars and sell whatever assets you can and raise whatever money you can to get grow lights and seeds together and just do what you can. And I mean, I've been growing since 2012 legally, and I have, you know, I have 2 rooms mostly set up, 2 8 by 10 rooms in my apartment, mostly set up, which I'm facing an eviction for.
Let's go for break. It's a good spot to leave off. And when we come back from the break, you can talk to us all about what's going on with that eviction. Yeah, you and I talked prior to the show about it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, Deb?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, after commercial break we go. Tonight's music is by Rick Reimer. A good friend of Deb, had quite the story there after the first break about Rick. And we're going to hear his song, Respect. He's also got some other good songs. So, and then after that, Deb and I will continue our conversation with Alex LeBlanc. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show. We are live here at 420radio.ca.
So what are you doing? Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Respect.
Yeah, man. Come again.
I don't want obedience. I don't want to build a fence. This is not about control.
No control, yeah.
This is just a simple thing. Every man can be a king. No man has a bigger soul.
Equality.
So even if you die of thirst, pass around the bottle first. Share it with your fellow man.
Pass the Dutchie, man.
Canada, the time to act is now. These days, your customers are seeking variety. Increase your earning potential by expanding your inventory with CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. CC Nexus stocks over 60 reputable breeders, including Canuck seeds, with a wealth of autoflower, regular, feminized, and CBD strains. All first-time customers will receive a free pack of Canuck seeds, plus a mug, t-shirt, and additional promotional materials. Add strains and increase your profit with CC Nexus, your Canadian-owned and operated wholesaler of cannabis seeds. Discreet, worldwide stealth shipping from Canada, supporting you locally. Call today 1-844-843-7995, 1-844-843-7995, or visit us at ccnexus.global.
Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here at 420radio.ca. Catch Cannabis and Coffee to Marijuana live every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern, 10 Mountain Time, only here at 420radio.ca. Join Reefer reporters Al Graham and his rotating news desk anchors Kim Cooper or Green Irene York for their weekly Reefer report here on 420radio.ca. Together, the trio spread Canadian and international cannabis news to their weekly listeners. Tune in every Monday around 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every week as these veteran news hawks discuss and give their opinion on the previous week in cannabis news. Don't forget, catch the Reefer Reporters here at 420radio.ca. Catch the wild, crazy, and the serious Friday night, 7 p.m. on the 420 Radio Show, only here at 420radio.ca.
Man, have you been to Canadays yet? Canadays, Campbellford's premier cannabis culture shop. They've got bongs, oil rigs, grinders, and papers. Everything you need for consumption. They've got soil, nutrients, and dome trays too. Everything you need for cultivation. Canadays. They've got all kinds of awesome cannabis novelties, clothing, and apparel. I know, right? It's a lot more than just a bong shop. Interested in gaining legal access? Canadays can help. They're a PACE information center. You know, people advocating cannabis education. Come by the shop and check it out. Canadays. Have your say without saying a word. Canadays.ca.
Legacy 420 has medicinal and recreational products down to a science, literally. With 2 biochemists on staff and a chief scientific advisor, every product is tested in the Legacy 420 laboratory. Legacy 420, Tyendinaga. Open 9 to 9 every day. Visit legacy420.com.
When you see a stranger's face, show that we are all one race. Show some warm instead of cold. You know what Bob Marley said, you must share your daily bread. Life is worth much more than gold. You don't have to do too much, give a smile a gentle touch. Many ways to make us start.
Hey, we're back. We are being broadcasted at 420radio.ca, and we are the Pace Radio Show. And I should let you know, not only being broadcasted there, but we're also being broadcasted at Gonzanista's Vapor Lounge on King Street in Hamilton. And just for those who don't catch the live show, don't forget you can always catch the podcast afterwards at iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, plus other audio locations. Today on the program, we are joined by our guest Alex LeBlanc and my joint host Debbie Stultz-Giffin. Deb, before the break, I interrupted Alex on, he was about to talk about eviction. Is that where we're going?
You did interrupt him, Al. Shame on you. And absolutely, we can carry on. We can carry on with Alex's eviction notice and what's going on there with him. So take it away, Alex.
So I moved into housing in 2015, April 2015 or 14, maybe 2000. I'm not sure. I have to look it up to get you all the exact right dates. Something like that. But and ever since I moved in here, I started growing in the windows, just whatever I could with a couple hours a day. And then I'd take them over to my other grow room and I'd drop them off there and finish them out there. So my landlords knew I grew here. I mean, all the maintenance people, everybody that ever came to my apartment saw a couple plants in a window ever since I moved in, right? It wasn't really a big deal. When they on about the spring of 2015, so yeah, I must have moved in 2014. So the 2015, they unhooked my HVAC, my ventilation, because it was leaking through the ceiling. And then I went without a HVAC until after the landlords did a shower in the bathroom for me to make it wheelchair accessible. Except they kind of botched that a little bit by putting a wall in the middle of my bathroom.
Alex, when you mentioned that it was leaking in your ceiling, was that air or was that moisture leaking?
So there was water coming through from the roof down through the ventilation into the HVAC.
Okay, so that had nothing to do whatsoever with your grow.
No, this was prior to there being anything in the bedrooms. There was just few window plants at that point, right?
Right. Okay. All right. Carry on with your story.
So there's just a few plants in my windows, like vegetating for the summer, and then by the time the end of August comes around, they're like 4 feet tall, and then I just whisk them over to the other grow room, kind of deal, right? So I grew here the whole time. The HVAC leaked. The landlord came, removed it. Didn't hook up another. Just left it. They did the disability renovations about December 2016, and utilized the closet where the HVAC used to be, and they were supposed to install another one in my hot water heater room and go from there, but they never. And so when they were doing the disability renovations, I was speaking with the maintenance supervisor, and I told him, I want to get some HVAC hooked up and utilize the holes that are there. So I threw another HVAC system up. I had it donated from a friend, and we threw it up, and it basically just sucked the air out and put it out the ventilation holes in the ceiling, creating a negative pressure atmosphere. And the apartment ran that way until just a few months ago, when the landlord came in with HVAC guys and fixed it himself the way he wanted it done. But that was just a few months ago. The eviction came about in December. Actually, I should do the pre-eviction. The landlord came, the maintenance supervisor, the office supervisor, another lady, probably like a human resources lady or whatever. And they all came to look over the apartment together and brought their notebooks and took pictures and everything. And I let them because I wasn't ashamed of anything I was doing. I mean, I'm just trying to produce medication, so I'm not going to get sick, right? I didn't think I was going to be persecuted for that. But, they took pictures and they tried to make everything the worst angle possible. They even took pictures of my capsules in the fridge, as if my capsules in the fridge are going to be a danger to anybody. The half-made capsules in the fridge that haven't had tops put on them yet. They even had pictures of stuff like that. I'm trying to make my medicine, right? But anyways, so they came in, they took their pictures, they they made one phone call after they left. They didn't say anything bad while they were here. They thanked me for coming in, and after they left, they made one phone call and told me I had to stop growing cannabis or get out. And I said I can't stop growing cannabis or I'll get very sick. And they said they didn't even say anything. They just put an application into the tenancy board to have me evicted and have a hearing right away. And they applied to have the hearing December 4th, 2017. It was a very hard time for me. My mother had just passed away. And holidays are hard when you have multiple families try and converge and you're in a wheelchair. So I had this thrown on my lap, and I had to do a whole lot of work, paperwork, to get everything ready for this hearing. I had to do a lot of legal research because I couldn't get legal representation, and I have barriers to access when I'm trying to, get legal aid and even get to and from legal aid. Yeah, I don't even remember where I left off with that one. Refresh me, where am I at?
Yeah, the why couldn't you get any legal representation?
So when I was going to the residential tenancy board, that's just a residential tenancy board hearing. I don't think you can get legal representation for that.
Okay, all right.
So after the tenancy board hearing, you have the right to appeal.
Yeah.
So after the tenancy board hearing, at the tenancy board hearing, I brought like a caregiver and a neighbor, and we stated the case, and it was kind of like they pretended not to hear any of the disability renovations part of the story, and then they granted the evictions on that I modified the apartment. And the firemen had been in, there had been contractors in, there'd been HVAC guys in for the landlord, and HVAC guys for me, and it's just getting ridiculous, right?
Yeah. Now you also mentioned earlier that they had done some work to a bathroom in your place.
So yeah, that's what started the whole thing. They unhooked the HVAC, and then they did the disability renovations in the bathroom, which got into the space where the HVAC was. And then I put a HVAC above the bathroom at the time of the bathroom renovations, which gave me ventilation back again. So when they did the bathroom, I put the HVAC up.
Oh, what about there was a wall or something you said?
Yeah, because the bathroom wall was back to back with the HVAC wall.
Mm-hmm.
So when they bumped that back a little bit to give me a little bit bigger of a shower, they went into the HVAC space, and there was no HVAC there. So I threw one in to get some fresh air in my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And I later on got evicted for it. Well, the eviction was granted for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because technically that was a modification of my apartment, the reinstallation of the HVAC.
So they've evicted you, basically. You've received paperwork and all that for it, right?
Yep. And then, so I got the eviction paperwork back about mid-January, and it said I had to be out by March. And then I went through the appeals process, and I applied to legal aid, and I appealed through legal aid, and I got a social justice lawyer to help me with the fighting of the eviction. I had to appeal for the eviction myself, which was weird. But then I got that in. That was difficult in itself to fill out all those paperwork and get
I can
everything.
just imagine.
But I did get my appeal in myself, and then before I got to the appeal, I managed to secure legal aid and get a social justice lawyer, and it ended up getting put off once because the timeline was so tight. And but eventually we got it done. I think the eviction hearing actually ended up happening in June, and then there was a mediated agreement, and then things are still ongoing because I agreed to let the landlord do the HVAC the way he wanted and do all the things that he wanted, and he came in and did all the things he wanted. And then after he left, the maintenance supervisor came back in after the contractors left and said they wanted to do a bunch more things. And I don't really even understand where we're at, because the maintenance supervisor won't talk to me because he's got to go through the whole board before that he's allowed to talk to me. So it's kind of just a legal limbo. They're not talking to me. I'm not talking to them. We're waiting for lawyers to talk. It's really weird and kind of a shitty situation to be in with a landlord that you can't talk to because the maintenance supervisor's not allowed to talk to you. It's pretty shitty.
Yeah, probably because you're in court against each other. Deb?
Is there anything else you'd like to add about that, Alex?
Well, I mean, I tried the whole way along, and I think they're not being horrible about the situation either. Like, I'm not out on the street. They're not being mean. I mean, they serve short notices specifically at certain times a day to give me as little notice as possible. But I pay attention, so I wasn't really worried about any of that stuff. I mean, the fire marshal came in here and told me there was no problem. So I left that situation confident. And all the education I got through the persecution was priceless because I got to meet the fire marshal. I got to know the local police forces are coming in multiple times with the fire marshals and with bogus warrants and this and that and the other thing. And, through the persecution of meeting the home inspector, because I called in the home inspector after, the disability renovations were done. And I found out all kinds of things about housing. For example, disability renovations in Nova Scotia that are done for housing don't have to have building permits, and there's no quality control. So I've unearthed all these human rights. I've unearthed tons and tons of human rights issues, so many that I don't even know where to start. And when I reach out to the Office of the Ombudsman, they reach out to their supervisors. And when I reach out to Human Rights of Nova Scotia, they say it's not their jurisdiction. And when I reach out to the Human Rights Commission of Canada, they say they can't do anything about cannabis, or they say they can't do this and can't do that. And I feel like eventually I'm going to reach out to the United Nations, and somebody's going to be able to do something. I reached out to the Governor General. That was the last one I reached out to, and she's supposed to respond to me within the next 3 weeks. And I really look forward to hearing what she has to say.
Absolutely. I'll be curious as well to hear the response.
Yeah.
You came to a cannabis day, and I've been sitting here trying to remember how many years ago it's been.
That was are you talking about the 2017 when I was right fired up and trying to sell in public and everything else?
That was when you had the clone.
Yes, yeah. I wanted to make a political statement on that one, 100%. And I totally stand by everything I did that day, and I'm comfortable saying that over the radio. So, for example, that day, this was, basically a statement. I had clones. This was Canada Day, I think 2017. And, the licensed producer system just had announced that they were going to sell clones for like $175 a clone. And that's extreme barriers to access. That's extremely unreasonable. There is no way anyone in my area could have ever afforded something like that. So when I went to Canada Day, I brought an extra clone, and I wanted to sell it to somebody for $1.75 just to prove a point in public, and I did. And I went to other dispensary owners' meetings, and I gave out clones outside of them because there was no regulations I felt in my mind at that time that would impede me from doing so. And right now, they just basically essentially rewrote all the laws. So I'm uncertain of anything at this point. I feel like there's test cases going all across the country to try and set new precedences to persecute recreational and medical patients. And that's not what legalization was supposed to be all about, in my mind.
No, I agree with you there, but I also agree with the test cases, and it's going to be interesting times to see what ends up getting to court and what ends up sticking and what they end up having to throw out with the wash.
Yeah, it just sucks when you have to be a test case. And I'm so much of a test case, they don't know what they want to test. It's just stupid. I don't want to be a test case. I want to fit in. I want I want to go back and focus on my family and the other things I need to do. I don't want to focus on this so heavily. But I'm really in the middle of it, so I don't get to go anywhere for a minute.
What would be your ideal situation as far as cannabis went if the government could fix things?
Well,
What do you envision it would look like?
If I had wheelchair accessible housing where I could grow cannabis out with my caregivers, I could ensure its quality produced. And then you'd need the funding for the electricity and the extra costs in the soil. And that could be all done. It could be done by somebody else and dropped off. It doesn't need to be administered through me. It could be administered through me. I don't care. But at the end of the day, it'd be really nice to be able to grow some small quality craft cannabis and be able to do what you want with it, because you can ensure it's to the specifications you want, whether you want, to harvest it early, harvest it late for different effects, or to do strain specific for your condition. I really believe for me with multiple sclerosis, and you probably feel the same way, Debbie, I'm just so sensitive. It's all those tiny little things that makes the difference in my medication. And I don't always like the adverse effects I get when I experiment with others.
Well, it's good to know how it's grown and how it's been handled for sure, to ensure that you've got clean, quality medicine to treat the symptoms that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah. So many people are prone to using pesticides and things like that, and when you're so sensitive like us, it doesn't work out very well.
No, not really. That's for sure.
Foreign, what do they call those? Radicals.
Oh, well, that brings me up to another point. Through conversations with the local lab, I'm really excited to work with them because we've never had a lab in Nova Scotia before. But they're changing and they're adding pesticide testing to the cannabis program in January of this year, and it's supposed to be one of the
Oh. Yeah.
I'm still here.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Just cut out. I feel like it's probably going to again. I think my battery's dying.
You cut out just as you were mentioning that the testing facility is adding pesticides to the list.
Yeah, I almost cut out there again.
You did.
Yeah, so they're adding pesticide testing, I believe, as a mandatory for the licensed producer system. So I think you can find that if you Google it, like Health Canada, mandatory pesticide testing begins January 2019, something like that. You should be able to find an article, and I think I might have had an article in that great big huge feed on my Facebook. But it'd be a step in the right direction as far as patients and end consumers are concerned. Then you might be getting something for all those taxes you're paying or all those fees they're paying the whole way along the line, but I don't know. It's going to inflate the price exponentially because from what I hear, those super rigorous pesticide testings are super expensive. And I haven't had to worry about them in the past with my cannabis because I don't use pesticides. So,
a kind of an interesting observation that cannabis became legal on October 17th. They're not requiring this testing to be in place until January of the new year, but the medical program with the LPs in place kicked off in 2014. So for 4 years with critically and chronically ill patients, it didn't really matter in Health Canada's grand scheme of things whether we were being subjected to tainted cannabis laced with pesticides or not. Am I too far off base there, do you think?
Is
that too far of a conspiracy theory,
No, I'd like to just take one step further. I took business for 3 years at NSCC, And did you know in business there's no term for businesses making more money than they pay for penalties? It's unethical, but the fact of the matter is if those companies made more money than the penalties they paid during those times and they got away with it, that's good business. It might be unethical business, but that's what they consider good business. That's what brings the country GDP, even though it's at the cost of people.
That's a sad statement.
Yeah.
That's a fact. That's the world we live in.
Beam me up.
We're poisoning ourselves for money.
But we can do something about it. You know, we can eat good food, and we can refuse to eat food that tastes like poison, and we can refuse to smoke cannabis that tastes like poison. And when we come across cannabis that tastes like poison, we can tell the people we bought it from that this is poison, and I don't want to smoke it, and I don't want to eat it, and I don't want to medicate with it, and I want you to fix this bad cannabis or this moldy cannabis or whatever this thing is. And I can't wait to see the industry standards jump through the roof and to never see some subpar quality cannabis again. That would be wonderful. But right now, when I go to the NSLC, it's a great disappointment. And I mean, I went there once, but they didn't have anything I wanted, and I had friends bring me their products, and it was very disappointing.
I've seen lots of pictures and stories online. Unfortunately, here in Ontario, we don't have a brick and mortar store, so we can't just go in and into a store. We can order it, and some people waited like 3 weeks for their orders, and I've seen the posts, but yeah, there's no brick and mortar stores here in Ontario. We don't get ours till April the 1st.
Wow.
Yeah, we're the only province, I think, as far as I know, that doesn't have any stores.
Well, it was interesting. Alex spoke of legalization day and a fair-sized group of us being in New Minas to protest. Mm-hmm. And I went in at one point inside the mall just to check to see how Alex was doing and if he needed anything. And coming through the doors of the mall, looking across the expansive corridor, there was a semicircle of people standing back, all facing the Liquor Commission, because there was a lineup of people snaking around the aisles of rum and wine and beer, all in line waiting to get into the cannabis outlet. They were all standing there with their mouths hanging open, basically watching the phenomenon. But right by the door was Alex in his wheelchair, and he had his own semicircle of people around that he was educating and talking to. Mm. There was a hair product shop and salon right by the door, so it was well across that expansive hallway again, complaining about the cannabis outlet being there because it would make their hair products reek of skunk.
Oh.
And their hair products reek anyway.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It does. And what's in their hair product?
Yeah, there's all of that too, isn't there?
I'm sure there's no terpenes floating through the air, or as far as out of their hair products.
That's another story for another day. Is all the toxins in there. You know, the cosmetic industry has a lot of the same products as the auto body industry. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. All right. Have we got anything else we want to discuss?
Thank you for having me on. I enjoyed being on the show.
Okay, well, what we can do is...
It's been our pleasure. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we sign off?
I really like to see lots of unity in the community and positivity, because right now the media... is the mainstream media anyways, is really downplaying everything, putting a negative spin on everything. to me, it's a tragedy when people die and they try and portray it negatively, and they don't go into any of the positives or any of the wonderful things they did with their lives. So let's try and keep things positive and unify and not fight over all the tiny little issues. And remember that it's okay if you have a different opinion on one side of the cannabis issue or the other. It's good to try to understand the other person's opinion rather than fight with them over it.
So, yeah.
I guess.
Well, it's best to try to work together. Don't just, come with a solution.
Let's unite and let's get this right.
Alrighty, Deb, Alex, we're into shout-out mode. Alex, have you got a person, place, a thing, a website, anything like that you would like to throw a shout-out to or thank you? Or
I would. I'd like to say thanks to Chris Enns for getting me started in the medical cannabis world and interested. Because when I had MS, he was the pharmacist was the first dispensary I became aware of in Halifax. And, I got to get inspired through Chris, through his court cases, and got to actually get involved in a few of them. And he's been a big inspiration for me getting started up. And, watching and learning from all the other activists that have fought for all the rights we have to date. It's been, really inspiring. There's so many inspiring people out there right now, but Chris would be the one I'd single out as the closest inspiration that touched me the most, I guess.
Chris is past guest here on the program, and yeah, you're right. He's involved in it big time. So, all right, good choice. Deb?
Well, just on that note, Chris was complimented outside of court in Kentville last week when he was there assisting Heidi. One of the lawyers made a comment to Chris that Chris had a better success rate than the lawyer himself did. So he's certainly got a reputation with more than just the advocates and activists in Nova Scotia. The legal world are certainly keenly paying attention to. I'd like to have a somber moment, if you will, and send my condolences to the family of Michael Nahili, and I hope that I haven't done an Al and mispronounced his last name too badly. But sadly, Michael was shot and passed away on Friday of last week. And he was a registered partner with chronic relief dispensaries in the Halifax area. I certainly never had the privilege of meeting Michael, but I've been reading wonderful things online about the type of person that he was, and my heart goes out to his family, and he had young children as well, but my heart goes out to his family at this very, very tragic time.
Yes, that's.
I saw that one, and I don't know him either, but his family must be going through a horrible tragedy right now.
Yeah, nobody did.
Condolences and support.
And was he at the? I saw the headlines. I don't know the whole story behind it, but was he at the dispensary when this happened?
No, he was at his home, and certainly details are quite sparse, but I'm sure as time goes by, more will become known and revealed.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
And on a more positive note, I'd like to mention to folks that Mum's annual Christmas Bazaar, and this is our 4th year of holding one, is happening at the Bedford Legion on December 9th from 12 until 4, and we'll have a number of vendors with a variety of products, and as well as an educational component on how to bake with cannabis and dose with it as well.
Will there be like Christmas wreaths there that that you could buy that instead of having cones on them that may have buds?
We've never had Christmas wreaths, but that's certainly a thought.
Oh, that'd be nice to have. Okay, all right. My shout out goes to our new joint host here at the Pace Radio Show, and that's Julie Shirello. And sorry, Julie, I know I will get your name right before too long. And Julie starts on December the 12th here, and she has her guest already lined up. A fellow by the name of Tim Blake. We'll leave it at that. All right, just a reminder that to let everybody know that next week I'll be back here at the desk with Kim Cooper and her special guest. You can find Pace on Twitter. We're also on Facebook, obviously, and we're on Instagram. You can find us online at pace-online.ca. Thank yous go to our sponsors, the friendly folks at CC Nexus, Canada's largest cannabis seed wholesaler. They're found at ccnexus.global. And our new sponsor, Legacy 420, you can catch them at legacy420.net. As well, a big thank you to our producer, Al Rapp at 420 Radio, and those listening to us at Ganjanistas Vapor Lounge in downtown Hamilton, Ontario. Thank you to you, Alex, coming on here tonight, sharing your story, what you've been going through with our listeners tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll have to have you on down the road, see how you've made out with your license issues, your evictions, and see how life's treating you.
Sounds good.
All right. Deb, thank you as always. You always bring a highlight to the eastern coast of the country, and it's always good to hear what's going on there with your support program.
Thanks, Al. Always my pleasure.
Until next month. Well, actually, next month is December. We're not quite sure what's going on there, right? Do we? Holiday time.
For sure.
Yes. All right. And also, always a big thank you to our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, and good night.
Good night. Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
Legacy 420 has medicinal and recreational products down to a science. Literally. With 2 biochemists on staff and a chief scientific advisor, every product is tested in the Legacy 420 laboratory. Legacy 420, Tyendinaga. Open 9 to 9 every day. Visit legacy420.com.